Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with Ken. Oh, are we live? We are. Welcome to Coffee with Ken. I'm Ken Biberai. I'm Managing Director at Savills, a leading tenant advisory commercial real estate firm. We are in week 50 of social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the news today, the House has passed a sweeping election anti-corruption bill. 53 million Americans have received the coronavirus vaccine. And Chipotle has announced that it will link executive compensation to environmental and diversity goals. Today's topic is lessons in leadership for women changing the world. We're joined by the president of Emily's List, Stephanie Shirok. Great to see you. Been a while.
Oh my gosh, great to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it. So wait, where are you? Are you in Montana? Are you in Virginia and DC?
I wish I was in Montana, but I am in Alexandria, Virginia, in my my very lovely little condo.
Not as spacious as Montana. Well, look, appreciate
it feels
you.
Much littler now after 50 weeks. So
every week we do that and we say like 49.
I hadn't realized until you said 50 that it was 50. Though I do, we're coming upon the year anniversary when the World Health Organization determined it a pandemic. And I was on my last trip the last time I traveled, I was in Texas when they made the call. And I remember calling Emily Kane, our executive director at Emily's List. And I was like, start planning now. We've got to go. We got to figure out what to do at the office immediately. And I flew back that afternoon. With a lot of like alcohol swabs. Like I didn't even know, we didn't have masks. We didn't know what we were doing. It was right.
It was wild. Yeah, literally.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, let's talk like, look, we love to start these kind of like a recap on the year, right? I mean, you're someone that I've known for a while now and know of all the work you do, but basically I kind of associate with you as traveling the country. You're barnstorming, you're coaching, you're leading, recruiting, you're like all over the place, right? So in your 11-year tenure that's coming to an end that we'll talk about, you've raised over $300 million. I mean, you've had this amazing growth. So a lot of that growth, it seems, has happened since 2016. So I'd love kind of a two-part question. Since 2016, how has Emily's List grown in your impact? And then how did you adjust March of last year to November? The culmination of like this kind of 2020 election, and like, how did you kind of pivot?
It's been such a roller coaster of a ride. And Ken, you're exactly right. 2016 was definitely a tipping point moment for women in politics in this country. We had seen the emotion building up during the Clinton presidential campaign, all these women who were, you could see it in their eyes, like they were so scared she was going to lose, and they right to be. And I just felt like there was going to be a burst of emotion with whatever happened. And that burst happened, unfortunately, because Hillary had lost and Trump had won. And what happened to Emily's List, we were about 30 years into our tenure at Emily's List. We started in 1985. Women started showing up at our door, basically signing up by the thousands and then the tens of thousands to run for office. And that number now is over 60,000 women all over the country, all sorts of backgrounds, racial, age differences, geography, professions, just you name it. The diversity is phenomenal. And so we as an organization had to rapidly build out programs to handle just education of basic like lessons to run for office, because we can't fund 60,000 candidates, but we could get some basic lessons. And so we built out our Run to Win program. We built out our training center, which is on emilyslist.org today. You can check it out. It's got all of these different lessons and templates to use as a candidate. Thankfully, the financial resources grew as well. And now we're a staff of 120. And until a year ago, a lot of those folks were living at airports. They were flying around the country doing trainings. We were training people, in 50 to 100 at a time in person. And then this switch went off, and what do you do?
Yeah.
Instantly. And I am so proud of our leadership team and our staff. And I'm sure you've heard this at so many organizations, like the resiliency of humans to make change quick when they have to.
Yeah.
we just changed everything. We
Hmm.
went on, we were already doing webinars. So we did more training webinars. The staff that were coaching those candidates were doing it on Zoom like this. And we stopped travel, and we still haven't really, we haven't brought it back. And it's just, I didn't ever want to be the organization that sent a staff to a US Senate race and then brought in COVID because they picked it up in the airport on the way.
Yeah. No,
That
I know.
just seems like a bad thing to provide. Like media training, yes. COVID delivery,
Yeah.
maybe not what we
I
want.
like it. I mean, but those numbers are staggering. I mean, I remember we did an event in like 2017, right? So President Trump was in office, and the number was 30,000 women were approaching you about getting involved. Right now, 60. I mean, just the magnitude of it. So one of the things I look back on the last 4 years, right? Conceivably was President Trump really one of the best things ever to happen to democracy, in a sense that it kind of created this momentum. Julie Briskman and Loudon, my aunt never would have run. I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of were happy and not doing stuff, but now felt mobilized. And in a silver lining, I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I wonder if this was a catalyst for just like real dramatic kind of impact.
Well, he definitely had dramatic impact in so many ways. And maybe this is the silver part of all the other bad engagement that he ignited, like white power organizations and all of that activism, which is negative activism.
Mhm.
But the truth is I don't think we don't know what would have happened if Hillary had won.
Interesting. Yeah, true.
Like, I just don't know. Like, would we have had 60,000 women? I don't know. But would we have tens of thousands? I think we would have.
Sure.
We were so afraid that it wasn't possible. And then we kind of found out, oh, geez, maybe it's really not possible. Now, I don't think that's true. I think we are going to see a woman president. But at that moment, the reaction was out of fear and to save my community, I have to do something. And
Yeah.
so your family runs, these women organize in their communities, everything has changed. But I'm not so sure that the positive reaction wouldn't have caused the same thing.
Sure.
Like, we did it. A woman is now president. Now we have to back her up. Now we have to make sure that we are engaged. It is possible. Now I see it. So I don't know what would have happened.
That's interesting. So much to that point. So much of this is showing it is possible, right? And what I loved about your new book, Run to Win, you really dive into this, right? And when I was going through it, it's not just a political book, right? It's not just for folks who want to run for office. I mean, these are real lessons that in business and anything you're doing in your community could really help. So when you sat down and put pen to paper, like what motivated you? What were you hoping to kind of get out there? What do you want people to take away from it? I mean, what was it kind of, give us the behind the scenes? I mean, you're busy doing a million things, so it's amazing.
Yeah, it was so well, one of the reasons Christina Reynolds, my co-author, and I wanted to do this initially was because of the power of the stories of the women that were running, particularly the candidates of the 2017-2018 cycle, starting in Virginia in that election, and then moving on through to having women deliver the majority for the Democrats in the United States House of Representatives. It was the first time we'd seen such a diversity of women, and again, diversity in race, in profession. Like, I always joke, I was like, I didn't even know a retired CIA agent could run for office. And here we got Abigail Spanberger, Congresswoman in Virginia. I think when she came to us, I was like, can you run? Like, is that, I don't know how the CIA works. I just, to be honest.
Good question.
It was such a funny, amazing thing. And she's such an incredible congresswoman. I'm so glad she's there. But the nurses and the pediatricians and the moms who have lost everything, like Lucy McBath, who lost her son to gun violence, congresswoman in Georgia. We wanted to tell those stories. And then as we started writing, we realized, some of them are changing the rules. Women are finding their voice in new and interesting ways. And there are kind of some old rules that still stand up. And we wanted to share those lessons and recognizing even in our own lives as leaders that it was helpful to us. And like, this is going to be the case for women leaders in every aspect of society. There's just so much that really goes across, particularly in the era of social media where everything's public. It doesn't matter if you're a congresswoman or a CEO or, running a business. It's a split second when a social media crisis can happen, or you could use it to your benefit. It's just, so we wanted to walk through that in those lessons.
And let's talk about the social media one. I mean, I flag that as something to think about. I mean, we live in a time. I mean, I ran for city council in New York in 2013, right? And like social media was there, but it didn't feel like you were under this microscope, right? So what are those conversations like when you're talking to potential candidates, and how do you prepare them of like this is going to be something that pops up? I mean, you talk in the book about like don't read the comments. I mean, what a kind of like straightforward thing, but with the proliferation of social media and a new generation of future women running, how do you prepare them and kind of give them the confidence to weather what is undoubtedly going to be some bullying and some harassment and some serious issues? I mean, people can hide behind all kinds of things.
That's right. And every candidate and every person in a position of power is going to deal with some of this period, because it's just the way social media is built, and the algorithms are built in a way that like the negative feeds on top of the negative really, really quickly. For women, unfortunately, it's worse. It just is. It is harsher. It is more character assassination than it is position, policies, and disagreements about how things are being done. And so we talk it through, and we know that these women are going to have to grow thick skin pretty quickly. And we talk about you will grow thick skin, and you got to be able to do that. It's easy to say, don't read the comments, but we're human, so it's really hard not to. But you just kind of have to ignore some of those pieces of things. The one thing we do talk more about, and we talk about this in the book, is as you're getting ready to take on any big leadership role, it's really it's an opportunity, I would argue, to look at your past a little bit, because our past is just more public than it used to be. Right. I mean, when I got started, I didn't have any online presence. There was no online, basically. Yeah, I had a Hotmail account for
it was on MySpace.
I'm a Gen Xer. Like there's MySpace. Oh my God, I forgot my MySpace. So we just don't have the same level of our life, of our family life, of our private life out there like the next generations do. And so taking a moment, but we have plenty, I will say. And so we take a look, see what's out there. I'm not saying like anything is so damaging you can't get around it. The key is knowing what's out there and then being able to get through it and set a plan. You just have to be able to answer the questions, period, whatever they are.
And in line with that, I mean, it really ties into kind of the rapid response approach, right? That's something common in politics, right? Like I feel like even in business on my side, right? When I talk to a lot of colleagues and clients and so on, I kind of describe that flex office and co-working, like that was invented in campaigns. You pop up a table, you do a short-term lease, you explode like crazy, and then you disappear, right? Like that was something in politics. And same in, as it comes to like rapid response, like cataloging, organizing. And over the summer, we obviously had, huge social unrest and racial issues post, the murder of George Floyd. And a lot of companies that felt like were flat-footed. They weren't prepared to kind of, be ready to respond. I mean, what kind of lessons are you advising clients that or candidates that you think kind of are applicable to the private sector about being prepared to, be forward thinking and not be flat-footed? I mean, how does that kind of play?
Yeah. And the truth is you can prepare and still something completely surprising will happen. And so what's key is knowing what do you do when something surprising happens. And we talk about that in the book. And Christina Reynolds is truly one of the best crisis management people in the business, not just in politics, but she's done it on the business side too. And the truth is like, who are going to be the decision makers? How do you get people together to talk about what's going on? And it's all about speed, but making sure you get it right, because whatever goes out first is most likely going to stick. And so it's really hard. Then it takes a long time, if that wasn't quite right, to change it. And so we talk about like know who those people are that need to be in place. And if it's big enough, ask for help. Ask your friends for help. And that's not just, communications friends, but if you're dealing with something that has aggravated uh, a group of constituents or a group of consumers, a specific group, find leaders, go to your friends and network and sit down with them and go, this is going on, and how do you think I should handle it, and will you help me? And the answer may be no, but at least you'll know where they're at and you can manage that too.
Yeah. So one of the things that's accelerated during the pandemic, I mean, it just hasn't been an equitable impact, right? I mean, some people are doing really well and hanging in there, and then communities of color, lack of broadband, women disproportionately losing jobs and leaving the workforce en masse as a result of the pandemic and all the pressures of dealing with life and family. How is that going to play into some of your efforts in terms of recruiting and motivating and pushing more women to run for office?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. I mean, the one thing that we know is that there are still so many women who are ready to run. The problems often are not, initially the problem was just getting to yes, like I'm willing to run. That was the obstacle because women didn't see themselves in the political system. The good news now is I think for the most part, we're over that obstacle. Women do see that their voices should be at the table. Now we're into the next set of obstacles, which is, do you have the financial resources personally to do it? Do you have the time between family and work to do it? It's really the personal stuff that we've lost some really great candidates because they financially, and I don't mean campaign fundraising financially, I mean, can you pay your rent financially? And I think it's a huge problem that we need to talk about in this country because we want good public servants, and particularly public servants who come from our communities that are in the greatest need, but we are alienating them by a system that forces them not to have even the option to do it because they can't afford to do it.
Yeah. I mean, our mutual friend, Lubo Gretchen Shirley, right, as an example of actually moving the needle. I mean, talk a little bit about that. I mean, that seems like such an obvious thing to be able to have support on, but.
Yes. Lubo she was running for Congress in New York City in 18, and she's a mom of little ones and needed childcare and couldn't afford it, and went to the Federal Election Commission, which is the federal police, I guess, of
elections.
Though they aren't very functional at the moment. Yes, I just said that, and that is true. But that being said, on this issue, they did the right thing. And they allowed a change where you could use campaign funds to pay for childcare. Now, to me, that makes complete sense. Why would we are asking people to go out and communicate all the time? Like, someone's got to take care of the kids, and it's expensive. So why shouldn't that be part of a campaign expense? And I would go a step further, frankly, and I know this becomes very contentious. And a lot of campaigns use it against each other, but we ask candidates to quit their jobs for a year to run for. I want people who are listening to think about that. You have no income for a year. How are you going to make your bills? How are you going to keep your family together while you're campaigning to serve the American people? Because that's the goal here, to serve your constituents. And so we should be more lenient in allowing other funds, whether it's a minimal salary or housing or something out of campaign funds to be used for folks who need it on any basis. And I want like a party truce, because it's not just both sides of the aisle have this problem. And I really, really would like to see some sort of change like this. Because I mean, we could go to public financing, we could go further, but we've got to get to a place that provides some ability for middle class and those with even less to run for office, or we're missing their voices. And that's who needs to be at the governing tables.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of take a step back, right? The whole goal isn't just to get women to run for the sake of running, right? It's women in office having a different viewpoint on all of these policy issues, from regulatory stuff, where there's safety issues you talk about in the book, whether it's healthcare issues, economic issues, right? Like you're in a position now to really talk about the tangible impact certain candidates you've helped elect can actually bring to the table on issues that were never really kind of percolating at the top, but now have a different perspective, right? I mean, talk about the importance of that, right? It's about actual public policy you're impacting and affecting.
It's absolutely right. And I really believe that when you have a truly representative set of voices at your decision-making tables, you will get policies that are well-rounded, community-based, that bring in everybody's perspectives, or at least better than what we've got right now. And when I say decision-making tables, I mean Congress and legislatures. I also mean boardrooms and academia and everywhere, because when you have more women sitting at the table, because by the way, one woman cannot represent all the women in the country. That is, yeah, I don't know. It's unless the magical man represents all the men in the country. Like that's just not how it works. We all are very different, and there's actually more women in this country than men. So we really need more women at the table to help guide these decisions. But you think about, I think about, for example, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland. They're the first two Native American women ever to be elected to Congress. They came in 2019. And now Deb Haaland is on her way to becoming the first Native American to be a cabinet member as Secretary of Interior, which Interior controls the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which, yes, that's what it's still called, and the Indian Health Services. This is huge. Like an actual voice from our indigenous people is going to be right there. And that's been the case even in Congress, to have their perspectives there. Nobody would even know. I mean, unless you have lived the life, how would we have any idea of what's going on those Western reservations? I grew up in Montana. I've traveled through them. I've been there with Senator Tester when I was his chief. And it's not this, that's not even the same than living the experience and bringing that whole experience in.
Yeah, we had a talk on venture capital a couple weeks ago, and we had this woman, Jenny Abramson from Rethink Impact, and she raised $180 million to invest in female founded companies. And it was just amazing kind of hearing the results, right? I mean, we were talking about Bumble and going public and 70% of the board being female. And, she's investing in female owned companies, not just because it's, the right thing to do, but because it's a real ROI and a return on investment. And it's just one of these things that you just kind of need to kind of keep at, right? I mean,
right. And we keep seeing it over and over.
Businesses, yeah.
Right. And there is academic research after academic research about how boards and companies do better when there are at least a minimum of 3 women on the board, if not more. Yeah. And that's why, and then some countries have the ability to sort of put regulations on the number of women, and they do it because it works, because it's more profitable, not because it's just the right thing to do. It's actually the beneficial thing to do for the economy. You get more women into the economic opportunities of the nation. There's going to be more money spent, more taxes paid, and more ability for everybody to lift up, which gets to what you'd asked earlier. Is this is a concerning time because so many women are being forced to drop out of the system because of the pandemic. And that is worrisome, because we know from research that even 1 year of lost salary is really damaging to the ability of women to advance in income down the road. And that's where we are right now. And we need to address it. And I think part of addressing it, in my opinion, is in this infrastructure bill that I really hope the Congress takes seriously and goes very, very big. Because in my mind, and a lot of us agree, infrastructure is building bridges and laying down broadband and fixing roads and building buildings and going green. But infrastructure is also home healthcare workers who are taking care of our parents and grandparents. It is childcare, making sure that everybody can work. It is our school systems and school buildings and our education. This is the infrastructure of our nation. It is not just brick and mortar. It is also the people of this nation. And if we can do this right, and I believe we can, and go big, we could really change the trajectory that we're currently on. We cannot have an entire half of the population lose massive ground because of a pandemic.
Yeah. Two of the things that I loved in your book about your bio, deep involvement with the Girl Scouts and student government. Talk about like young girls, advice to young women, like what to get involved in, like how you went from that to president of Emily's List. I mean, it's an incredible story.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was definitely that little girl who wanted to do everything. I was like, oh, Girl Scouts and youth group at the church and student government. And I loved it all. And I think any engagement in those types of programs are really, really good because it gives you a sense of leadership. What I loved about Girl Scouts is that, they're really there to teach you leadership and community at the same time. And I mean, let's face it, we live in a culture that from early on, we're already driven to be in gendered roles from the beginning. I mean, it's just, we're stewed in it. And I don't, culturally, I hope that continues changing. And I do believe it is changing and getting better. But Girl Scouts is such a great venue for girls to find their voice early on. And then learn all of the things they get to learn. Of course, I was an outdoors woman, so I always wanted to be outside, though I sold a lot of cookies.
I have no doubt. Well, speaking of that, I mean, the cookie analogy I find amazing because it ties to a thread of what you've done, right? Making the ask, right? I mean, like how similar is that? And give everyone before we let you go, like, what does it mean to make the ask? I mean, what are your principles, advice? Yeah.
I know that's so good. And I write about it in the book because and I'll say that actually to candidates, like my biggest fear is asking for money. I was like, Girl Scouts sell cookies. If a little girl can go up to you and say, will you buy a box of cookies? You can ask as an adult for resources to invest in your community. I mean, come on. I got rolled by a Daisy Girl Scout at the dry cleaner a couple of years ago. This little 6-year-old who like upsold me. She upsold me. I mean, it's great.
You can do it. Oh my gosh.
But we ask for things all the time, and I think it's human nature that it's a little bit challenging. I think it's more challenging for women than men. It's definitely more challenging in communities of color areas because culturally it can be challenging. But I'm like, we can teach. It is a skill to learn. It is not something that is impossible to do. You practice, you make the ask, and then you let the person answer, which is like the key advice I have. And some people recommend making the ask and taking a drink of water so you don't interrupt your ask.
Advice. Yeah.
I count. I'm a counter. I count to 7. Let me tell you, nobody can make it to 7. Not a single human being is going to make 7 seconds of silence. Might as well be an eternity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Well, wait. So it's been 11 years. Well, what's next for you? What are you thinking? I mean.
Yeah, thank you. I've been an amazing 11 years. I'm so honored to be at Emily's List during this turbulent time, but also massive growth. And I just felt it was time for me to step back and take a little bit of a break and see what other opportunities lie ahead for me. So I don't actually have a big master plan, but I have a lot of wonderful people who are going to help me on my next stage, whatever it may be, which is the other thing we talk about, like keep that network together.
Yeah.
You've got folks there who will help you throughout your life and keep them close.
Well, listen, I mean, everybody listening, I mean, Run to Win, whether you're running for office or not, or just being in business or want to impact the community, highly recommend it. Stephanie, always such a treat to have you. Thanks for coming on today. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Our next conversation is actually going to be next week. We're going to do a role reversal. I am going to be a guest with Global Wonks talking about remote work, real estate post-COVID. So they're flipping the tables on Coffee with Ken, but it'll be fun. In the meantime, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and wear a mask. Stephanie, thanks so much. Good luck with everything next.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a great one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.